Hello, hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And welcome to episode 130. Boop, 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 boop. Got a few things going on here. It's a finale, season 13 finale. Next couple weeks are going to be little vignettes, little short ones, it's our finale. It's our third anniversary. We've been doing this for 3 years now. Unbelievable. So we just thought we'd take a moment, take a deep breath. Wonderful. And we'd talk about our opinions on this freaking game that we love to talk about. We've talked about it for too long, and we haven't even talked about some of our basic interests within the game. So, if you're new to this podcast, welcome. If you're a frequent listener, welcome. I wrote up some questions. Some of them are pretty basic. Some of them are a little goofy, but we'll see where this brings us. It's just some conversation about Magic and the things we love about it. How long have you been playing Magic? Because I started, I think you brought me in right after or right during Rivals of Ixalan. So like my first pre-release was Dominaria.
Mm-hmm.
The Dominaria set in the winter of 2018. So 5 years.
Wow. I got in roughly around Ice Age. Couldn't tell you anything more than that. Just when I went into the shop to buy my first Magic cards, Ice Age was available. There was also a whole pile of other stuff, but I think Ice Age was the most recent. It was definitely the most prominent thing on the shelf. Ice Age in 4th edition. I started with a 4th edition gift pack, which was two of the starter decks, I think is what they were called then. I don't remember. Essentially, the starter deck it looked like a pack of playing cards. It was the equivalent of 3 packs of Magic cards, but it came with extra land because, back then you needed land because they weren't just lying around everywhere and there weren't tournaments everywhere to just scoop up a land. So I started with 2 of those and just like 3 or 4 boosters. I think there was a couple of Ice Age boosters. Probably started off with some Fallen Empires, maybe some Homelands boosters, because those were cheap. And, at that point, I wanted bulk. I needed cards.
Yeah.
I was looking for even the cheapest stuff. So that's roughly when I started.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best thing to do as a new player is, just get a bunch of cards and then figure out if they're good later.
Right. And I'm one of the only people I know who started playing Magic and hasn't taken a break. Everybody stops, and then they just walk away from the game for a while, give it a year, 2 years, some longer, some a little bit shorter, and then they come back. And I never did that.
I can't imagine who would stop playing Magic for a year. I mean, I guess I'm keeping up with Arena sometimes and stuff, but I haven't played Paper Magic since May, and before that it was October or something.
Yeah.
Or August.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to go to my local game store and that's the other thing is I know a lot of people do play it, and I think I lucked out with the privilege of joining an already established play group that would meet once a week at somebody's house rather than trying to navigate dynamics with strangers.
Right.
But
I think it goes back and forth, right? Like Wizards of the Coast always says that the casual player, the one who buys, a few packs of cards every once in a while and plays at their kitchen table, is easily the most dominant numbers wise of Magic players.
Right.
And then there's the competitive level player who goes to their shop, plays all the time, is constantly on Arena, and just really loves that tournament format and is buying cards to keep up to maintain their ability to play standard or any other standard or pioneer or whatever other format they're looking to play. I don't know how many play groups are there that meet on a weekly or even every 2 weeks or once a month to play Magic at somebody's house or just not at a game store. I don't know. I'm curious. I always believed that there were a lot of them out there, but now I sort of wonder. And if they do exist, I think a lot of them are really insular. Like they just have no idea of what's going on outside. I'm betting a lot of them are running, they're playing Commander, but they're playing Commander with a pre-con from 8 years ago, and they're still running that. Or maybe they added, 2 cards or stuff along that lines. I just don't know. And it would be curious to find out. I mean, my play group that I started in 2005. I mean, and before that I went to law school, but just before that I was in another play group that had existed from pretty much when I started playing. They were, this was a play group that I found. I didn't create it, I found it. And they played consistently for, God, I don't know, 4 years.
Oh wow!
If I'm remembering my math right, so it was like 4 or 5 years with a really solid play group there, playing every week. And then I went to law school and found one guy there, and the two of us played every week or a couple of weeks, and then got to Boston and got a play group started within 8 months.
That's wild.
And then we it just sort of developed, and it's been going ever since. I mean, we stopped for the pandemic, but even then we were playing on Spell Table.
Or on what was it, Tabletop Simulator?
The Tabletop Simulator for a few, So,
and
been very lucky.
Yeah, and what I love too about that is that it's definitely more about, as cheesy as this sounds, the gathering, because like you brought me into this with the philosophy that it is like it's like your dad's poker game type thing, where it's like you're just kind of hanging out, eating pizza, a few people have a couple drinks, and just kind of it's about catching up. It's about having this as a vehicle for the night, rather like to fill in the awkward silence, or like have things to focus on that are just beyond the game. And it's nice and casual, and I think that's kind of the vibe we're always trying to bring with this podcast. Is like so many people ask me when I tell them that I have a Magic podcast, they're like, oh, what's it about? And I was like, well, it's just, I mean, we talk about like casual stuff, and at this point it's kind of like just a reason to keep in touch with Bruce, especially like since I moved. And it's just always so nice to have that consistency, especially once the pandemic hit, especially once like, all these things happen in life. And that's what I love about Magic, is that like it does have that consistency. But with that, do you find yourself like gravitating toward more like specific colors, or I guess that's the big question, right? Is like, what's your favorite color in Magic? What's your favorite color, Bruce? We're new friends.
My favorite color in Magic is white. It is. However, as far as do I play more white than other colors? No. I've sort of capped myself now with like 15 Commander decks, and I've looked at it, and I'm always trying to create a balance because I want to use all of my cards. So if I have a deck that I want to take apart, fine. That's number 15 in my top 15 list of Commander decks, and I take that one apart. Well, when I'm deciding what deck to build, I just look at which colors I'm playing the least, because that generally is the way I go. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do a 3-color deck this time. I pick those 3 colors. I look for a commander in those 3 colors, or a commander or a partner, combo, and that's what I'm going to build with. So, white is definitely my favorite color. I like the token creatures. I like the ability to do mass removal, and white has a lot of pinpoint creature destruction stuff. So I kind of like white, but I'm not going to pretend it's the best color. So
I love white. I think some of that is being contrary. I do love the things that white does. I love vigilance. I love the incremental value. I love
Come on,
the idea.
You love red.
I was gonna get there. With white, I love like the small tokens. I love like going wide. I love the underdog of it all. But yeah, no, I think you nailed it spot on. I think red is I love the impulsivity. I love the now, the timing of it all, and I love that with red there's so much instantaneous stuff that you can kind of steal wins from people with it, but
right.
It also has the big creatures. It's also got the little creatures. It's got certain lines of play that you have to sequence it exactly to really get the best value.
Red has the big game swings, and they're not always predictable. And I know that's something you enjoy, and it's certainly something I enjoy as well.
So I went on to your Architect, and I went on to my Mox field and typed up a list of all of our commanders.
Sure.
And then broke it down by color identity. I didn't go any further than that. I didn't go with like how much white is in this deck, how much red is in this deck type of thing. I think I got all your commanders, including previous ones.
Okay.
It was about 34, at least on Architect. I don't know.
Yeah.
You may have lists elsewhere. But according to that, do you have any idea what your number 1 color is? And they're all relatively close, except for this first color.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I would assume green.
It's red.
Red. Okay.
Yeah. So you've got 14 decks that have white in it. You've got 14 decks that have blue in it. You have 13 decks that have black in it, and you have 13 decks that have green in it. With red, you've got 17.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool.
My next guess would have been black, so I still would have been way off.
With what I have in Moxfield. I also didn't count your decks that you built specifically for episodes of this podcast.
Right.
So I didn't count those. With my decks that I found on Moxfield, I had 17 decks.
Yep.
White had the least representation with 4. Blue up next with 6. 7 was green. And then black and red both tied for 11 decks. Yeah. But that also brings me into kind of like the next idea is like, when building a deck, do you try to strive for a specific number of colors? Knowing that I've already done the data, I thought I tried to do less than 3. I always tried to do mono or 2 color decks. My data proves that wrong. My data says that out of the 17 decks, 9 of them were 3 color.
Oh, okay.
And I think what helps that idea is the fact that I've taken apart most of my 3 color decks.
Okay.
Because I think, generally speaking, I do love playing 2 color decks. I think that they bring a little bit more restrictiveness, but also it kind of gels a little better, especially on the land mana based type thing where it's a little cheaper to do 2 or 1 color decks. What are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, as far as monocolor, those are pretty rare. I don't do many of those. I've got Nissa and Muzio currently. I don't remember if I have anything else, but those, generally speaking, I don't do a lot of monocolored stuff. I feel like I'm primarily two colors. I build a lot of decks that are two colors. I've been building more that have been three color lately, just because I feel like there's a lot of three color commanders that I would like to take a shot at. And I mess around with some, try some out and just sort of build a quick deck list to just sort of get a sense of it. So, but like right now, I think I have 4 active 3-color decks. And I think just about everything else is 2-color, except for Nissa and Muzio. So, so I think I'm mostly 2-color, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think 4 seems about right. I know that you're building one right now, a 3-color one. For somebody else. But with your numbers that I pulled, with the 34 decks, including the Ruhan one that you're building now.
Okay.
You have 6 monocolor decks.
Yeah.
Or have had 6 monocolor decks.
Okay.
19 2-color decks and 9 3-color decks.
Okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense considering like 2-color is just like, it's conceptually much easier to like handle. Like you're not doing too many things. Things aren't being watered down. It's kind of focused.
I feel like with 2 colors, I have a pretty good handle of what each of the 2 colors is supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you get a sense of sort of a lot of the themes that are that Wizards fits in those 2-color options. And if they're not really what you're interested in, then you don't really tend to go that way. Whereas with 3-color, 3 colors is sort of all over the place. It can kind of be whatever you want it to be. If you're willing to go 3 colors, well, then you pick your theme and then just pick the 3 colors that make that theme. So it sort of runs that way. But.
It's very interesting looking at my 3-color decks that I have, because most of them are the same color identities. So I've got like a handful of blue, black, green. So like Mimeoplasm, my Ukima Khazar deck, Muldrotha. But then I also have a couple white, black, red decks. And then like I think 2 Jund decks. So it's like it makes sense. Like I would gravitate towards certain color identities based on the things I want to do in my decks.
Right.
And it was interesting too to see your monocolor deck specifically. I've got 4 monocolor decks, 4 2-color decks, and 9 3-color decks. But with my monocolor decks, it was either black or red.
Yeah.
With yours, they definitely fell like more broadly across the spectrum. But according to your architect, you've never built a mono white deck.
That doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't. No.
White fills in the blanks for so many other colors. I think about the pairings with white, and I'm excited to do every one of those. I know I've done a red-white deck. I have a white-green deck right now. White-blue is a deck that I've done more than once, and white-black. White-black is my favorite color pairing, and I know I've only done one deck with it, but that may change. We'll see. The problem is when I get a deck that I like, I don't tend to build another deck in that same color pair. So while there might not be a lot of Orzhov decks listed, boy, Breen is my favorite, and I would build a bunch, but trying to spread my collection around a little bit and make sure that I've got all more of the bases covered as opposed to just building Orzhov every time.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because you've got 2 green monocolor decks and 2 blue monocolor decks, which just surprised me considering.
What was the other green monocolor?
Kolvori. I don't know if you ever built it, but
I don't think I ever built it.
Oh well, data skewed. Let's delete the whole episode. Do you have like a favorite archetype or a least favorite archetype?
Well, favorite archetype, that one's easy. It's tokens. As much as I wish that it wasn't the difficulty is that tokens is an archetype that really can be built in any color pairing. It just seems like every single color pairing has like a strong, like some sort of a deck with a strong token theme. Whether you're building merfolk or black white has inklings and all of the zombies and all of the soldiers. It's something that's there no matter what set of colors I'm using to build the deck. So I tend to gravitate towards it, and I've tried to fight that. I've tried to pick other things and be like, no, we're not doing tokens this time. Let's find something else. So I'm like, so I said to myself, okay, well, you know what? Let's go with red blue, because that's just going to be sorceries and instants. And yeah, there'll be a couple of tokens because the sorceries and instants will make some tokens, but it'll be fine. And then I started looking at the commanders and figuring out what I wanted to do, and I'm like, you know what? The one I really want to build is Broody Clad. Like, oh, you idiot! Of course. So
you should just have multiple Broody Clad decks.
I could do 4 different Broody Clad decks, but my least favorite archetype for me to play, something that has a lot of effects that trigger, because I get so annoyed with myself when I miss triggers. It's one thing, when you've got a bunch of triggers on your upkeep, I just put a coin or something on top of my deck. So before I reach for it, I have to take the coin off. Well, if I have to take the coin off, it means there's something going on in my upkeep that I should be doing. So I just look at every card and work through any of the upkeep requirements. But when it's something that says, when your opponent does X, do Y. Like, okay, but now I have to pay attention and make sure I never miss X. And then suddenly I've got 3 different things going, and I'm trying to pay attention to all of it at once. And invariably, I miss triggers. We'll go finish that person's turn, go on to the next turn, and I'll look down and be like, no, I forgot all about this card. And it just drives me crazy. So I tend to try and avoid that kind of deck.
I'd say for me, my favorite ends up being Aristocrat. I think I just generally gravitate toward it because it's simple. Like, there's very few effects within the idea of Aristocrat that work well together. And I think one of my favorite things about it is that it does do that incremental thing, but it also, it does a few things. It utilizes generally crappy cards. It creates incremental value kind of under the radar, where it does the little nicks here and there, but you can easily build up your board state to have it be a house of cards, where if somebody takes out one thing, the whole thing tumbles, but with that, it tumbles on them. So
right.
Unless me as the pilot is paying it close attention, okay, I can detonate this thing now and win the game, it ends up just me being okay, I just kind of keep building up my wall and then wait until somebody tries to interact with it, and then that will probably end the game, which feels almost like I'm playing with my food, which feels rude because it is, but it just takes that moment where I have to figure out okay, does this end now? But I think the other thing too is it also, generally speaking, incorporates a lot of graveyard shenanigans, which is great. My least favorite archetype to play, I think, is card draw. Anything that incorporates a huge amount of card draw is just too much for me, because I'm this feels like cheating, and 2, it just, then you have a handful of cards, which does feel good. I like incremental card draw. I love drawing cards throughout the game. But if you have a handful of, 30 cards, how do you decide what to do next? Because as soon as you start doing that, you're going to realize the better play, and then you're going to be shit.
Mm-hmm. I want 7.
Yeah.
I want 7. I get more than that, and then it turns into this analysis paralysis. Am I doing the right play? I bet there's a way for me to win right now. I wish I wish I could. I recently had a game where I ended up having, over 20 cards in hand, and it was just,
You got to put like half the
what
deck
am
down.
I
You're gonna be
supposed
like, all
to
right,
do? Right. I mean, you're scrolling through this like irrelevant, set that aside. I already played a land for the turn. Clunk. Okay, now what are these cards? I can play like 4 or 5 of them. Or there's 4 or 5 in my now that I could actually play. I have the mana to play 3. It just
and
I'm just not great at it.
I get the idea behind massive card draw is like, now I dug into those answers, but like then you got to filter, like you said, like you got to filter through to like actually see what you can play, and then even beyond like the paralysis of it, it is just like at that point it's just tutoring,
right? Well, and to be fair to people who play a lot of blue, I recently had a game when I had a pile of cards in hand. I was trying to work it out, and I saw a line. I'm like, okay, but to get there, I need this. And I looked through my hand. I didn't have it. So it was like, how do I draw more cards? I need to draw more cards to make this line work. Okay, well, I can do this and this and this, and that leads to a card draw. No. I can do it. No. I did it like 7 or 8 times before I finally found the card, and then was actually able to play through my line and get the win. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I get that. I get the joy that is that. But it just, so often I don't see the line. So there are times when it's probably better for me to just have a deck where it's like, here, this creature or this creature, and you're going to swing. So.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is like, I don't think either of us are saying it's a bad archetype. It's just card draw, massive card draw, not for me.
Not for me.
Yeah, we're gonna get back up a little, get a little bit more, I guess, not meta,
ethereal
lore, I guess. So
sure.
Like, the game, you're 2 planeswalkers. You're summoning things out of the blind eternities. You're like, here's a monster, here's a squirrel, here's a man that flies. Okay, sure. With the more recent sets, planeswalking has kind of become wishy-washy in terms of like what's going on, and people have lost their sparks. Bruce, you just lost your spark. You are a planeswalker. What plane are you trapped on now?
So you're asking my favorite plane?
Which one do you frequent the most?
I'm going to say Fiora.
Okay.
I love Conspiracy. I love the set. And I actually kind of like the lore, too. I like that it's really pretty separate from a lot of the rest of Magic. It's legal. There's no reason why Jace or Chandra couldn't go there, but they don't. So I like the characters. I like the lore that's built up in that space. I built just about every single legendary creature that was in the original Conspiracy. I think it's also a good place to be to lay low. Most of the intrigue and the danger goes on around the court in the High City. I think you can, as long as you're willing to either keep your head down in Poliano or just get out of the city. The rest of Fiora is just a fine place to be. So I'm gonna go with Fiora.
Interesting.
So,
yeah,
Andy, what's your pick?
I'd probably say Arcavius. I don't know. I really like a lot of the mechanics that came out of what's that school?
Strixhaven?
Strixhaven, thank you. I don't know. I like the mechanics. I like the characters. It felt different enough. Like, I know a lot of people going into it were like, oh no, a Harry Potter set. And even like as it was being released, I feel like that kind of stuck around. But like, I feel like the story at least didn't feel like that. I'm excited to see kind of the next time we return, like what else is on this plane, because like they made it very clear that Strixhaven is not the plane and it's not the only school around. But yeah, short and sweet answer, I guess, is Arcadios.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, we are quickly running out of time.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna end it there. But thank you everyone for hanging out. Thank you so much for listening. This was episode 130. Next 2 weeks we've got short little vignettes. But I wanna thank you, Bruce, for the past 3 years of this beautiful podcast.
Man, oh man.
I want to thank myself. I want to thank you, listeners and watchers out there. If you're not watching on YouTube, go do that. If you are watching on YouTube, press the subscribe button. You get notified when they get released, which is excellent.
Yep.
But that's going to do it for this week and for this season. Oh, we're Temple of Falspot. We're decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Have a great night. Play some Magic for me. And may your 5th land be the temple. Wait, before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!